Now that we've established the aggregate expenditures model in a private closed economy, let's look at what happens when we start adding in both the private and the public sectors. So I'm going to work on table 31.5 on page 611 here. So if we open up our class notes and we're looking at the tab labeled 0321, I've gone ahead and reproduced the table in here for you. And let's take a look at the columns for a few moments here. Column one is where we have GDP being pre-tax now, where then column two applies the taxes levied by the government for us to get to what we've been calling disposable income in column three as being GDP minus taxes, representing what consumers can use for purchasing. We know then that fuels consumption behavior by consumers, which will also give them the ability to either save or dissave based off the level of their consumption related to their income fueled by GDP. In column six, we have then the contribution of businesses, which we determined was based off of an investment demand curve where interest rates, as established by our federal bank, determine the amount of total investment that would be incurred. And we will assume that to be a constant $20 billion here. We've now added in the international sector too, where we are now trading by exporting to foreign nations, as well as importing by bringing products in, thus allowing us to think of net exports as being exports minus imports. In this particular case, you can see that we have government purchases then established as the level of spending by the government. And in our case, we've gone very idealistically by suggesting that the amount of taxes that we collect is also equal to the amount of government purchases that are expended. When we put it all together, it looks similar to what we've done in previous chapters, where now aggregate expenditures, where it was originally consumption plus investment spending in a private closed economy, is now consumption plus investment spending plus net exports plus government spending to give us aggregate expenditures across all sectors. So if I construct the table down below, let's take a look at just the basic math in here. So we know that disposable income is equal to GDP minus tax. Then we have consumption, and consumption and savings are related to each other, where if we have disposable income and we subtract off consumption, in this case, because our consumption is greater than our income, we have that dis savings period, and then we would be drawing from our historic savings in order to be able to compensate for our excess consumption. Earlier, we said that aggregate expenditures would just be equal to consumption then plus investment spending, and that would be in a private closed economy context. So let's go ahead and just copy and paste these things down for us so that we can get all those formulas in and take a look at what our equilibrium GDP would look like if we were in a private closed economy. At a GDP of 410 would be an aggregate expenditures of 410. And then in that situation, we would have equilibrium based off of that level of GDP. If we look back on what we talked about the other day, when we look at the 410 level of our GDP, sitting here on line three, that would suggest that 50 million people were able to be in the workplace at that level. Now let's look at what the addition of both the international and government sectors do. So if we add on then exports and then subtract off imports and then add on government spending, we get ourselves a new formula by which we now can see that our equilibrium has shifted from its previous level, which was at 410, where now GDP is equal at the 490 level, which then suggests for us the introduction of that government sector and net exports, the government sector being fueled by taxation, allows our aggregate expenditures in GDP to be equal at the 490 level. And at the 490 level, we can see from our previous table, that infers that 70 million people could be in the workforce rather than the 50 million people who are at the 410 level. And as we've discussed previously, If we are shooting for an equilibrium to be no want and no waste and maximizing human happiness, we have understood clearly that people are happier when they have the ability to work.